Hello out there, and taking a quick look today at a new variation on a classic Kershaw. And right here we have the Knockout, and the Knockout is a knife that usually, while it's USA made, it does come with 14C28 and blade steel and aluminum handle scales. And here we have this upgraded limited edition with M390 blade steel, which I think they've done before once, but the carbon fiber handle scales are a first for this model as far as I'm aware. So, and if they have done them before, it's been a good long time. But it's really nice to see knives like this, classic models from Kershaw or any other company that get brought back into relevance. So anytime I hear about stuff like this happening, I get excited. And I do need to thank my buddy Randy for sending this knife my way to check out. He ordered it from GP Knives, had them shipped directly to me just so I could get a look at it and an understanding of it, since it was something that, I wasn't going to be buying. And actually, I didn't know what he was sending me, so it was a pretty cool surprise when I did unbox this. And today we're just going to focus not really on a review of the model, but just on some of the talking points and the features of this upgraded version and value when it comes to that and how they executed it. Because for me especially, anytime I see a model that is getting like a limited edition or a sprint run or something like that in carbon fiber, especially from a budget company like Kershaw, and this was never really a budget knife per se, but just companies that could sort of cheap out with it, I'm always wondering what are they going to do and how they're going to execute it. And I've got to say, Kershaw has done a pretty darn good job with the carbon fiber. What I was worried about was that it was going to be super glossy. That it was just going to be a super glossy, slick carbon fiber just for show, sort of like on this squid here. And this is fine. For the squid, you don't really need anything more than this. But what I always thought about when I thought about the Knockout was that it's a really like slim kind of knife, but it's always been meant for what I thought was a little bit more serious kind of action. It does have a lightweight aspect to it and, super slim compared to what you would expect with a broad blade like this. But it's a user knife. It's always been a knife that people have used and beat up and people put through their paces. And you wouldn't want something that was just super slick and not usable. And what I can say, thankfully, is that the CF on this it does have a nice shine to it, but it has a decent traction as well. It has a little bit more of a matte finish. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how they executed it. When I'm remembering the Kershaw leak that they released a few years ago, the first carbon fiber leak, that carbon fiber is pretty similar to this, very reminiscent. I'm going to bring in my ZT0770CF just to give you a comparison, and maybe you won't be able to tell, but just slightly more traction, slightly more of like a matte kind of finish on this, but it's only slight. So, yeah, I am happy with the direction that they went with this. Now, cosmetically, there are just a couple slight little blemishes, like right up here. I don't know if that's just a manufacturing defect. It's something that's very small. Maybe you can just see them. It looks like pinpricks. But I don't think that they're anywhere else on the scale, and I'm not sure if that's something that the whole run is going to have a problem with or whatever. For me, it's minor. Obviously, you would wish they wouldn't be there, but if this were my knife, I wouldn't make too big a deal out of it, But the carbon fiber thing it's a serious question because depending on who does it, I mean, anyone can put out carbon fiber that's just not great. When the Delica first came out with that carbon fiber limited edition, the fit and finish on mine was terrible, for one, but also I just wasn't a fan of the glossy stuff. I'm just not my personal preference. And something like this just makes a knife feel a whole lot more usable. With the way that this knife is in hand, it's just classically been a very ergonomic model despite how thin it is, and I didn't want to lose any of that. And yeah, this knife feels very good, so big plus. Especially when you're throwing the M390 on it, it does just give you that idea, like let's use this and see what it can do. And yeah, so the carbon fiber isn't a letdown when it comes to that. One thing aesthetically that I want to make sure I mention is the stonewash on this knife. It has a very aggressive stonewash. If you look at like the Kershaw stonewashes in general, some of them are pretty aggressive, but it looks like there's just a lower layer stonewash and then a very aggressive stonewash on top of it. So look at those look at those lines and marks. I think it's super cool. I don't know if everybody will, but for me, like whenever I do acid etches and stone washes, it's the kind of stone wash that I think is most attractive. and it's going to cover up wear, that's for sure too. So, I mean, just the fact that you already have these pre-existing scratches and this aggressive of a stonewash, when you use this knife, you beat it up, you get some scratches on it here and there, you won't even be able to notice. So, and I can't remember if all knockouts have that. I mean, it's just something that jumped out at me now, so definitely wanted to bring that to your attention. Other stuff to note about this knife, let's talk about the subframe lock. So I believe, and correct me if my Kershaw history is incorrect, but I believe this is the first subframe lock model, and that it's called the knockout because they actually knocked out a piece of the handle scale in order to create the subframe lock. But the way that this works is the subframe lock idea basically gives you the ability to have a handle scale that can be aluminum, like the original one is, or, you know, in this case, carbon fiber, but then what you do is you insert a piece of stainless steel to the scale to give you your lockup, and then that way you don't have to have a full stainless steel model. Very cool. What it also does is it keeps the weight low. So I think the weight on the aluminum model, the base model, was 3.8 ounces is what it's listed at. And this one, take a look at this, 3.32 ounces. So, I mean, it's super light for a knife of this size. So, I mean, if we're looking at, you know, I'm trying to think of what else I have on the table that is going to be, like, relevant. Look at the PM2, actually. So, 3.8. So, we're looking at almost a whole half an ounce of more weight on the PM2. Obviously, a little bit of a longer knife. And the PM2 is not a heavy knife to begin with anyway. But, I don't know, you can just get an understanding, especially with the broadness of it too. Just that 3.3 is a pretty darn light knife. So, definitely has some good things going for it. The last thing that I want to talk about here today, guys, is just the value. The value is super interesting because this knife comes in at $130. And that might not seem like it's a cheap knife, and $130 is a good amount of money. But when you compare it to just sort of the way like the things are trending in the market and some of the other prices and some of the things that have gotten inflation, it just becomes I think a more competitive kind of option. The baseline model of the knockout is running like $75 to $80 now, which it seems like that has just, with inflation, gone up quite a bit over the past few years. And that's interesting because some Kershaw models don't go up. Like if you look at the Skyline, it's been like $40 for forever, right? But the regular knockout has gone up, and so $130 for this versus the $75, $80 of the base model. I mean, I think that's a pretty fair upgrade. And then when you take in some of the other ZT Kershaw kind of stuff, you know, this 0770CF with the steel that people will call inferior to M390. This one has LMAX, but I think they make them in S35 now. You know, so when you look at that, $192 these things are listed at on Blade HQ now, which, you know, it's a little bit crazy, but what stuff like this does is it gives us the opportunity with inflation to sort of bypass that and have a different option. And I think the quality versus the ZT, maybe the snappiness of the opening is not quite as good as the ZT, but it's really good. So you're not going to have an issue with that. And you've got thumb stud or flipper deployment. So I think it's a winner. And most importantly for me, like I said at the beginning of the video, I just really appreciate when a company takes a model that is a classic and they put more focus on it and bring it back and give the public an opportunity to fall in love with it again. You know, it's always not painful, but I hate being the guy who finds these old models that no one else knows about and there's no one to share it with. And this is Kershaw doing a really good job of saying, this was a classic, we're going to keep it relevant, take a look at it now. So yeah, definitely am impressed with that aspect. So any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, guys, definitely let me know down below. Really appreciate you watching. Thanks again, take care, and have a good one.